It's surf time, everybody. This one is number 457, covers the period June 19th to June 25th. We're looking at mainly the astrological influences, putting it all together into, hey, here's what you're going to feel all together. But there's a lot going on. Yes, we have Jupiter Cazimi, and it's a perfect Jupiter Cazimi that leads up to a Cancer new moon. But before that, summer solstice. So a lot of shifts, a lot of jiving going on. We'll have a lot of alignments to Mars and Pluto. Can't wait to show you all these. Here we go. All right. Here's the intro chart. Let's just get straight to it. I think that would be best. All right. Shout out to Tova Oberon. Blending lots of different things together into one cohesive message for the week. And I think you get it. I really think this is the point that I always wanted to, this was my vision for these astrology reports, these CIRF reports. It's one thing to know all these deep alignments everywhere and the importance of each archetype, but what about putting it all together? And it feels like one thing. And of course, it's not going to be for all of us. We're going to have an individual result of it, but if the majority of us are feeling this energy, it doesn't guarantee we know what they're going to behave like, but what's it going to feel like? How to expect that so that you're not running from unknown discomfort. But anyway, shout out to Tova Oberon. You have the best comment this week. All right, as far as the eclipse cycle goes, running right into the middle of it, and it will be the end of our surf week. We're in this shaded area, tight little space in the middle of the eclipse cycle that was ruled by Aries on March 29th. And at the end of our surf week, we're going to have the new moon, so another lunar cycle in Cancer, starting the end of our week. On this chart, I think it's important. We're in between these two vertical lines this week. Obviously, a lot happening. Some squares, a key conjunction, which is the Jupiter Cazimi. We have summer solstice, or sun goes into Cancer right here, new moon at the end. But look at all these purples lines. These are all in conjuncts, and they all go exact this week. That's important because in conjuncts just in general represent adaptation, acclimating, adjustments. And when two planets are in alignment with and in conjunction, they're adapting to each other. So it indicates change. And so that's a segue into our main energies for the week. Obviously, with all the influence, the blue here, all the influence from Cancer, because we start with Mercury and Jupiter in Cancer. So Cancer influence is already, robust. But then summer solstice, sun goes into Cancer, and it makes an immediate conjunction with Jupiter. So it's a kung pao. It goes, this Cancer line goes all the way up, and gets even stronger because you have the Jupiter Cazimi there, and then you have the new moon in Cancer. So a lot happening in Cancer, very strong, but also all these inconjuncts and the alignments to things like Pluto, Uranus in its last stage of Taurus. And then what else did I put here? Uranus, that's it, getting ready for another shift. Uranus about to switch signs, and won't happen this week, but a lot of change in the air and about to. As far as this Uranus moving signs, it's an about to have a new cycle, a new moon cycle. Anyway, this orange line is representative of all the change possible this week, and probably hitting its maximum around the sun, and probably on Wednesday the new moon period, because that's also denoting some new things, new moon, new change. All right, starting with Thursday the 19th, here are the main astrological alignments. First, we start with the sun, the most dominant energy normally in any chart, as well as the ascendant, but we're talking about a 24-hour period, so that's negligible. And we have the sun in Gemini. Sun in Gemini with what looks like a very strong, robust meaning we have 2 planets on the one side and a square and 3 planets on the other, mainly these 2, Neptune and Saturn together. This is the idealized structure. And it's going to, this Neptune, Saturn, and the square over to Jupiter is going to remain until the 3rd week in July with all these slower planets. And that includes I believe that was a 8-degree orb quoted on that 3rd week in July. It might be 8 degrees. But anyway, still a factor all the way to almost the end of July. And then we have Mars in Virgo. This is the nitpicker, but discretionary action and doing the right thing, or wanting to do the yearning to know what the right thing even is. And then look at all the alignments there. You have 3 inconjuncts over to Mars. You have 2 sextiles. And that's primarily because of this coagulation. If we're looking at the degrees of all the planets, this is the degree plot. A lot of your planets, especially the slower ones, are at the very beginning stage of their degrees placements, regardless of sign. And when Uranus switches over and the Sun after solstice, those 2 will eventually all be in this category. So what that does is puts a lot of alignments on whatever is early in that sign. So for example, Pluto in Aquarius and in conjunct over to Mars. This is a tightening conjunction. All these inconjunctions are tightening and waxing in this week and will go exact and start to wane all this week. So lots of change and lots of adapting with this pressure system, with expansive Jupiter conjunct with the Gemini Sun, at least for now, square over to the ideal structure. And there's pressure to get it done. There's pressure to have positive empathy, positive wisdom for things having to do with the home and nurturing. But it runs pressured against what should be. And so maybe exaggerated emotions towards home and that the importance of that. But what's keeping you pressurized is this should feeling, should towards the idealized form of it, but more for self and what's right in terms of my individual plan, Aries. But ideal, that's Neptune. It comes in visions. And then, welcome to summer. Summer solstice, Friday, the 20th of June at 9:42 p.m. Central Daylight Time. Here it is, Sun at 0 degrees, 0 minutes of Cancer. Heightened sensitivity and intuition, especially in familial relationships. So you get a lot more nostalgia and fond memories, emphasis on family and home and ancestral roots, developing a deeper understanding of one's emotional needs, and most likely having a lot of empathizing going on, or more stories, and a lot of them with Jupiter, excessive amounts of internal stories that have to do with other people's emotions and suffering experiences. So a lot more empathy. Imagine a cozy, intimate gathering with close friends and family. We're going to use that picture later. And imagining this archetype would have a nourishing meal prepared with love and care. So the feelings here are deeply connected to one's emotional and feelings and inner world, inspired to create a nurturing and safe environment for yourself and for others. But summer starts here. It's a seasonal thing too. This is a cardinal sign, Cancer. And so it's a celebration. And there's going to be rituals and ceremonies bringing sun into the district of Cancer. Saturday, the 21st, not a lot to add other than our square now that we talked about before, the idealized structure and what's best for me individually. is a lot at odds with expanded view and wisdom that you ascertain from empathy from others. Why don't you care? Like, we should care, but it runs at odds with this, with the ideal. And that is getting, purer, because we have all Cancer on this side and all Aries on this side, all pressurized together. It's the individual versus the family, if you will. A lot of potential for disagreement with that massive square. And then, speaking of disagreement, we have a power struggle alignment when you're talking Mars in Virgo in conjunct to Pluto in Aquarius. These are a power adapted to power. And Pluto is going to be the underworld, the deep subconscious, and as a powerful force, and it controls a lot of most of humans' behavior without us knowing about it. And that's one of the really good goals of like a mindfulness, is to be able to have domain over that. That's called willpower. But if you don't know that it's happening and you do things accidentally and, think they were just an accident or whatever, then it's probably Pluto at play. Pluto, for most people, controls roughly 95% of their existence without them really knowing about it. So anyway, there's the underworld power, deep subconscious, adapting to the practical doing of Mars in Virgo, and doing it right and doing it thoroughly and doing it orderly. But now Pluto over here is influencing this by putting a lot of collective concern in there, and also the individual rebel. There's the paradox of Aquarius, which we just want people to get off our back, but at the same time, we do get concerned about the state of affairs of the collective. So there's the underworld, and here's the outer world, and they might have power struggles between each tension between individual action and collective transformation, transformative experiences through challenging the status quo, striving for perfection in the pursuit of revolutionary change. So this is a really important alignment, and with all the other inconjuncts, it's a synergy of change. And then remember, whenever you have synergy of change, you also automatically have a homeostatic type of influence, which is the trying to resist the change. So when you have adaptation going on, you have a choice. Do you want to adapt, or do you want to conform the change back to the way it was? It's always there when you have a change. So feelings associated with this is driven to make significant impact on society through your actions, inspired to refine one's skills and knowledge to contribute to a better world. So imagine like a person like this meticulously drafting out a blueprint for a utopian city surrounded by complex diagrams and equations, like a Jacques fresco. That's this alignment, Mars and Virgo. And he's meticulously doing something, but for the betterment and a revolutionary, better world, because of the Pluto and Aquarius. All right, on Monday 23rd, we have just this continuation. So, but right now, the chessboard, it's very chessboardy, because Mars in Virgo wants to do things absolutely correct. And you have Jupiter and Sun in about a 30 degrees of orb right now. So in a Cazimi, if you're under the rules of 1 degree, so which I am, 1 degree both in azimuth and in inclination, which is the case here. That's why I got the cursor down here. We have Sun parallel Jupiter. So this Cazimi is already happening, and it's very intense in Cancer. So it's a chessboard with pieces representing various social groups and power struggles waiting for the next strategic move. That's putting all this together, all these inconjuncts and the sextiles. You have the square, remember the pressure in the square to the ideal and the ideal structure. You also have the cosmic liberator that's happening with, I haven't mentioned that yet, with the this is going to be the next 8 years, at least Neptune sextile Pluto, we know that. And Neptune and Saturn going to be conjunct for a while, going back into Pisces, and just stirring things up in between collectivism and standing up for myself. Both of those are going to opportunistically change over the next, at least year. But the Neptune piece will be there for 8 years. Okay, so this is the overall impression. Just have all these. It's a really interesting alignment because it does speak to this. I'm sure all of you have seen that 5D chess reference, chessboard or chess playing with the collective, and that's also this alignment because it is meticulous. There's all sorts of lines to the subconscious power, all sorts of lines to the outright action power of Mars in the outer world. And then you care, and this can easily overcare because it's Jupiter. Jupiter is a planet of excess and expansiveness and positivity. So, and positivity doesn't always denote good. You can have too much positivity and it be bad. All right, so remember that. It's not about good or bad. It's about excessive, expansive, and doesn't want to contract. That's pressured with the Saturn, which does contract. So those are at odds with each other as well. So focused and disciplined actions towards nurturing goals, transformative experiences through social connection and groups, because the Pluto change and transformation. And so we have this chessboard. The feelings associated with this chessboard alignments is driven to make a positive difference in the lives of others, thanks to the Cancer sextile over to Virgo. Inspired to refine one's skills and knowledge for the benefit of all, transformed by the power of social connection and shared experiences. And then we have on Tuesday the 24th, the Jupiter Cazimi goes perfect at 10:17 a.m. Central Daylight Time. On June 24th, you see the inclination is still parallel. This is exactly at 3 degrees 22 minutes, still squared over to the ideal structure, the ideal of decrease. And this is the have to care for, it feels like overcare for things in your close vicinity or things that you really care about. You're going to nurture those and probably bounce in and out of caring and controlling and not even know the difference with this alignment. So here's one of the downsides of Jupiter with the Sun, Jupiter Cazimi, especially in Cancer, is that it's resonating, it's empathizing, but it does have difficulty empathizing with any negative emotion. And so there's just going to be this natural avoidance of anything negative because Jupiter really only attunes to positive. And that's why when real life turns sort of what could be perceived as negative, Jupiter has a hard time with that, and will have a tendency to do the silver lining or just totally ignore it, or spiritual bypassing is a chance here. And where this has a problem with interpersonal work is that because it's Cancer, there's this massive, just natural ability to empathize, to take on an emotion, to actually feel what it is that person is feeling. And if it's negative over there, there's automatically like an obligation, which this energy would like to rather avoid if it can. And so it'll probably go real quiet when, unwanted emotions come out of other people. But this side won't let you do that in the name of finding and cutting the fat of what you really need in life. But we have the ideal over here, and the ideal things the way they should be, and the ideal for the cosmic liberator is what's best for me is the best for all of us in this mini grand trine. Whew, there's a lot here, but here's the picture of Jupiter Cazimi. All it sees is rainbows and roses everywhere. Everything's positive, or wants it, yearns for it, right? But you also get confidence and self-assurance, a lot of optimism and positivity, especially in the areas of, family and fondness and bonding and connection, your homeland, sense of purpose and meaning. It's going to be a very interpersonal one. And then, folks, here we have it, the new moon in Cancer. And just as promised, we're going to have that get together, that family get together, cozy, warm meal for everyone. This is a intense emotional connection and sensitivity because it's just abundant love, support from the family and loved ones, profound sense of belonging and emotional fulfillment. Everything I just talked about is with the Jupiter Cazimi is still in play because it is 30 degrees out right here. So still Jupiter Cazimi. But look how everything gets really organized here. So you have Mars at 4 degrees. So he's within 30 minutes of a pure sextile. So that's really tight. And then you've got the inconjunct over to Pluto. The Pluto's got a inconjunct with a tight inconjunct. It's within 1 degree of inconjunct over to the new moon with Jupiter. And then those players over here are very tight as well. So a lot of organization that makes all these energies fine-tuned and more crisp. So everything I talked about, profound sense of belonging, a cozy, nurturing embraces and regard for family, deep connection to one's emotional core and inner child. Now, this is mainly just the new moon with the Jupiter influence. What is also interesting is at the time of the new moon, Jupiter just happens to be conjunct with the new moon, but also B exactly 3 degrees, 33 minutes. So that's interesting. That's very lucky because of Jupiter. In fact, this is a very lucky, fortunate new moon as well. So there's that sense of fortune in it, the sense that everything's going to be okay. A lot of hope in Jupiter, even in times where it feels hopeless. I'm not saying that Neptune and Saturn only feel hopeless, but with Saturn there is kind of like a cold hard truth sort of a feel to it, and maybe could see some problems or some hurdles in this, but it's all designed to get you your best possible vision of your individual best self. And there's the advantage there. All right, let's summarize through the I-Ching. We got hexagram 64 with change lines 1, 3, and 4. And so basically you get the restless anticipation of standing at a threshold, right? So it has this feeling of things are about to change, major change, caught between what was and what's coming. It's the feeling of holding your breath before a major change. And think about the lunar cycle too. The lunar cycle is in a massive change. You've got all the inconjuncts just happen to come all together, and then they'll go away together after this week. So they come in, all go exact during this week, and all those denote change as well. Experiencing both excitement of imminent transformation and anxiety of unfinished business. There's an inherent tension here, like being energized and unsettled simultaneously, knowing that completion is inevitable, but uncertain about what form it will take. Yeah, very, very cool. All right. here we go. Here's the summary. Putting it all together, this is the influence. And just to sum up, the I-Ching was basically about nearing completion, anticipation, feeling uncertain, feeling eager, anxious, and hopeful. And when you put all this sort of expansive energy together, the Jupiter Cazimi conjunct new moon, all that newness and expansiveness, it will be making a little more yang, a lot more yang than this lunar cycle would ever probably feel, because we're in a waning crescent moon all the way to the new moon. And so that's just almost extreme yin over here. But with all this newness, the sun going into Cancer, summer solstice, just that expansive air with Jupiter going in as well. And so I think that's going to feel a lot more yang, right? Than we normally would see in a waning gibbous or waning crescent moon. All right, in summary, this week brings two dominant energies, the nurturing Cancer archetype and the transformative power dynamic. The summer solstice ushers in exceptionally potent Cancer new moon, amplified by Jupiter's Cazimi alignment during this celestial celebration. Behind these prominent influences, a powerful mini-grand trine is reshaping our collective consciousness, guiding us towards structures that honor individual passions and authentic expression. However, challenging inconjunct aspects to Mars and Pluto introduce tension and power struggles that complicate this otherwise promising landscape. While abundant new possibilities emerge, the I-Ching reveals the week's underlying emotional tone, intense anticipation mixed with profound uncertainty, and a deep longing for positive breakthroughs. All right, there you have the influence. Now let's get to the solution. Start with putting the change lines in. You get 26. Now we're looking for behaviors. The solution is going to hopefully give you just a recommended set of behaviors that you can contemplate and perhaps use in your individual experience to maximize success given the energies that we just talked about. But you have your free will and you can do whatever it is you feel that is right for you. Deliberate restraint when you have the power to act, choosing to build resources, knowledge, and strength through patient discipline instead of quick action. You hold back your capabilities, study deeply before moving, focus on creating solid foundations rather than seeking immediate results. This is a waxing or a waning crescent moon period. So it is containment of potential. But why this is important is we talked about that expansive energy of nearing completion, that anticipation feeling. And so with that expansive feeling where there's an opportunity to contain, there's something there to contain instead of wasting. All right. Okay. So we got... this is our conversion chart. We put the new moon in. It's the biggest energy. And we plot it. And it's 4 degrees, 8 minutes of Cancer. So we get Rave Mandala, hexagram 52. This is what the new moon awakens in the Rave Mandala, human design. And we also awaken Gemini Sidereal Astrology. Okay, and so gate 52 is it's a powerful emotional transit bringing an expansive new beginning, amplified by Jupiter's growth, all within the nurturing protective sign of Cancer. We are activating gate 52, line 1, creates a collective opportunity to find stillness within emotional depth and family connections. So keeping still is hexagram 52, temporary and self-imposed inaction for the benefit of assessment. So mainly assessment, our line 1 is about capturing the energy. It's the name of the channel is 52-9 because it's in the root center. And it's the channel of concentration. It's connected to the root sacral. So line 1 is think before you speak. The pause that is so profound that it leads to silence. The pacification of energy that leads to stillness. Speaking first, this is the downside, speaking first and living with the consequences afterwards. Energy that cannot be stilled. Now, the rulers of each, the increase, this is Earth, and in Rave Mandala Human Design, Earth is exactly the gate and line opposite your natal sun. And then we have the decrement is Mars. Mars is the ruler of the decrement. So speaking first and living with the consequences afterwards. The energy that cannot be stilled. So overall, think before you speak is just one piece to the pie of this. It's more about expression. So any form of expression is appropriate for this line. But we call it think before you speak because that's how most of us communicate or express. It's the recognition that true power comes from thoughtful restraint rather than impulsive expression. So we need a little bit of both. There's advantages of both. That's natural and normal. And in the I-Ching reading, we need to learn how to use both of those. Especially the speaking first and living with the consequences. So in general, what we want to do is create physical outlets for Mars energy. So things like sports or hobbies or exercise, any sort of physical work, digging a ditch or chopping a tree or whatever, can be very, very practical things. And very vigorous things can be physical outlets because a lot of this speaking first and then suffering the consequences later is coming from too much pent-up energy. So this is important for this week, is we're going to have probably a lot of anticipation, a lot of urge to do stuff, and that's going to make this Mars for everybody a little more action-oriented and accidentally speak before you think. So things you can do are develop a pause ritual, a physical gesture, or a breath pattern to interrupt your reactivity. Also being fully present when you're talking to someone. And what that means is when they're talking, you're absolutely just listening. This is difficult to learn if you're not doing this already. But chattering and thinking about what you're going to say next is not active listening. Because you're not really fully present. You're kind of time sharing. You're listening to what they're saying and then thinking about your response. So one of the advice on the Earth side is to shut down thought patterns and thinking processes when someone else is expressing or talking. And so you can really pay attention. And then you can also, as a very good technique, is before you go about your reply, i.e. Mars, you could ask a question about what they just told you so that A, you make sure that you really understand them and that you're responding to something that is relevant. And B is that you are not doing what I just talked about, which is not fully being present. So you're doing two of those things by doing that mindfulness technique. And then the third, I guess, there's three, more authentic, because to be fair, when you're rehearsing something, it almost takes you away from pure authenticity. It can improve your communication by rehearsing, and that's what you're doing in your mind. If someone's talking to you and you're rehearsing your response, you're just giving out a canned response, which might be old by the time it's ready for the delivery. And so pure authenticity doesn't need to rehearse. It just says it without any restriction. And is that good or bad? It's not about good or bad. It's just about authentic and genuine, because there's no preconceived notions. You're going through the intuitive sense, hopefully, instead of a forced fear-based response, which would be from like a pressure to respond. Oh, I have to talk now. Well, that's a different sort of energy. Okay, and identify your personal triggers for impulsive speech and create your own interpersonal intervention plan, which is to reduce impulsive reactions. All right, let's get to the summary. All right, remember we have containing the potential, containment of potential. And this is great for the waxing crescent moon period, right? Leading up to our new moon. We talked about think before you speak, and already you can start seeing some overlaps. Sidereal Gemini, so things we're going to be doing curiously, adaptively, playfully, quickly, cleverly, and behaviorally contracting in the waning crescent to a new moon. If anything, it's going to be contemplative, thoughtful, looking for lessons. That would be a very Gemini thing. Looking for lessons from the past lunar cycle, the one that we're ending, and looking forward to the new moon and designing your goals for the month. That would be in Cancer. I recommend doing the new moon in Tropical, but that's the only tropical piece that you'll see in here because of the way we've laid out these strategies. So the overall overlap: conserve your energy for this lunar phase, contain your potential, and store any extra energy that you might be experiencing, including the summer solstice and Jupiter Cazimi. Both of those together, both of those separately, is like an expansive feeling. Chest is expanding out. It's a breath in, and taking everything in. Perform the human battery. The human battery is basically, instead of expending those things, those energies, those expansive energies, we can contain it as kind of like a concept as a human battery. Instead of getting rid of it, like if you're angry, for example, slamming the door is you can break the door. You can communicate, aggressive things to the people who heard the slamming of the door. So kind of an unhealthy way to handle energy. Plus you're wasting the energy. But what if we were able to take that chaotic energy and trap it in, not trap it in, but organize it, and then put it into the meridian, put it into the human battery. And the way that we do this is when you see an emotional spike, instead of reacting in any way, instead of thinking about how do I solve this, you immediately do this. So first, expand your presence. You can imagine expanding your presence, the ability to handle this emotion, and then accepting the emotion. But more importantly, you'll start to imagine where you put your focus, where you put your attention, the energy goes there. So even though it's, in this example, it's anger and it's very chaotic. So this is the extreme example, but grief, major grief, is like that too. You'll start with the third eye and you put your attention there. When you put your attention there, all that energy starts to go towards that. You'll be able to feel a physiological sensation there. And then you start to move your attention down the front of your body very slowly, so that you see that, or you feel that energy following your attention all the way down through your sexual glands, back around your butt, and up your spine. And so you'll imagine this cycle. It comes up over your head, and it's just the meridian, highway of energetic life for us humans, down the front, up the back. Maybe not that fast, but as you practice this, you can get even faster. And within a very short amount of time, what was chaotic anger is now very little energy lost, hopefully. And you've just added energy to your system and put it into the human battery. Now, here's an advanced move: is you can tag this extra energy. So whatever, here's your homeostasis, your baseline. You had anger for a couple minutes and you processed it. That increase in energy is now, it's not anger, it's just increased energy. So you just got a free upscale on your energy. And now you can tag it to an activity. So because you have a little extra energy that you would normally have, now you can keep that energy elevated until you carry out the task that you'd like to. It's called channeling. So you can channel that energy. I like that task to be, it doesn't have to be simple, but I recommend having it correlated in difficulty with the amount of energy that you just put on, that you just tune to and put into your human battery. So if it's just a little amount because it was a little emotion, well, pick a real simple activity that is kind of correlated with the reason this whole emotion got spiked to begin with. Like do something appropriate for it instead of reactory. But you can tag it. And when you tag it in your mind's eye, you imagine yourself doing that activity. So you rehearse it. All right, back to our summary. Number 2, use your words judiciously and try to pause before speaking. It's not about perfectionism in communication, rather making sure you know what the effect is of your words that they will create. In other words, before you say anything, what effect will these words have? That's what we're looking to get. So then before you speak, it's not about being a perfect speaker. It's about speaking intentionally so that the effect is created by those words. They're intentional. Be curious about this. Number 3, be curious about the next lunar cycle, especially at the new moon. Think cleverly and adaptably about some goals you'd like to achieve in the next month and plan accordingly. As for the social meter, I think it's all very low. 1 through 3 denotes more of, the think before you speak. I-Ching is, technically very interpersonal type of strategy, but one half of this continuum is just to be silent, and that's the strategy. So anyway, I think it's both. 2 is probably a both arrow, but I think generally its intention is more of a decrease. So we have 3 decreases in social. Gemini could be either way, obviously. And so I think it's not that you're not allowed to be social, but I don't think there's a lot of requirements to be social this week. We'll put it that way. Nor is it warranted. All right, 42 minutes. My time's up. So thanks for being here. Consider subscribing. We do these every Monday. And then our CIRF week starts from Thursday to the next Wednesday. So you have a few days to prepare for it. Also, if you want a copy of this chart or this playbook, so I called it a playbook, it gives you the summaries, things to think about. You can get those free by going to Telegram. Link is below, and you get these charts for free, no cost. All right, take care. Namaste. See you on Wednesday for a dream bot.